What do the top players in the world think about your favorite brawlers? Today, we're diving into an exclusive tier list, straight from the pros, to reveal which brawlers are dominating the meta and which ones are getting left behind. Whether you're a casual player or grinding trophies, this is the tier list you need to see to level up your game. Let's find out which brawlers are top tier and which ones need a serious buff. Welcome to the newest Brawl Stars tier list, including every single brawler in the game. F-tier brawlers. Hank finally received the tank trait that charges his super from taking damage but remains the worst brawler in the game. Mr. P moved down from D tier to F tier, becoming one of the weakest brawlers. Doug remains in F tier, only usable in very rare circumstances on specific maps in the current pool. D tier brawlers. Edgar stays in D tier. More hyperchargers added, but no buff makes him less viable competitively, though still effective in non-competitive play. Bull remains in D tier, continuing to be one of the worst close-range brawlers. Bonnie moved up from F tier to D tier. While still weak, she has some specific situations where she's not the worst option. BB moved down from C tier to D tier due to counters moving up the tier list. Grom stays in D tier, remaining the easiest thrower to dodge. Miko moved down from C tier to D tier. Despite a small health buff, stronger counters make him worse. C tier brawlers. Rosa stays in C tier, remaining a decent counter to some brawlers. Colt remains in C tier, competitive only in heist mode due to his long-range damage to safes. Chuck stays in C tier, mainly effective in heist and harder to deal with than Colt once set up. Chester moved down from B tier to C tier, less useful as a tank counter due to better alternatives. Charlie moved down from B tier to C tier, proving weaker than initially thought after her buff. Buzz stays in C tier, solid but easily countered. Mo dropped dramatically from S tier to C tier after recent nerfs. Fang remains in C tier, having too many counters despite one of the best hyperchargers. El Primo stays in C tier, received health buff but still feeds enemy supers too much. Shelly moved down from B tier to C tier, outclassed by other tank assassin counters. B moved from B tier to C tier due to power creep. Leon stays at top of C tier, effective only against brawlers struggling to find him while invisible. B tier brawlers. Jackie moved up from C tier to B tier due to favorable meta changes and current map pool. Brock moved up from C tier to B tier, valuable for wall-breaking ability without super. B moved up from C tier to B tier due to reduced counter usage. Meg stays in B tier, high damage but limited by short range. Sam moved up from C tier to B tier, works well with current top support brawlers. Mandy remains in B tier as a decent sharpshooter on open maps. Jesse stays in B tier, relatively unaffected by meta changes. Draco moved up from C tier to B tier, effective when paired with support brawlers. Pam remains one of the most balanced brawlers in B tier. Cordelia stays in B tier, good counter strategist but less dominant in 1 versus 1s. Crow remains in B tier, effective for bush checking and tank countering. Ruffs moved down from A tier to B tier, hypercharge impact was overestimated. Carl stays in B tier, strong except against stunning brawlers. Lily remains in B tier, better approachability than other close-range brawlers. Kit stays in B tier, strong strategically, but easily countered if drafted against. Tick remains in B tier, fragile but excellent at preventing healing and chip damage. Dynamic moved up from C tier to B tier, highest damage among throwers despite dodgeable attacks. Willow stays in B tier, benefiting from Super Width buff. M remains unchanged in B tier. Spike stays in B tier, slightly worse due to better alternatives. Nani remains in B tier, buffed hypercharge stats show more potential. Pearl stays in B tier, consistently reliable especially in knockout. Lola remains in B tier, solid damage and range. Poco stays in B tier, more useful with current meta supports. Tara remains in B tier, weak at range but deadly close-up with excellent super. Sprout stays in B tier, dominant when uncountered. Mortis remains in B tier, maintained by hypercharge ability. Nita moved down from A tier to B tier, effective with walls present. Bella stays in B tier, struggles in 1 versus 1 against other sharpshooters. RT remains in B tier, safe choice despite attack difficulties. Squeak stays in B tier, weak against aggression, but excellent map control. Otis moved down from A tier to B tier due to meta shifts. Clans dropped from A tier to B tier after movement speed nerf. Griff stays in B tier, slightly improved by super damage buff. Barley moved down from A tier to B tier due to power creep. Sandy remains in B tier, valuable with walls present. Colette stays in B tier, strong tank counter but weak against healing shields. Buster moved from A tier to top of B tier due to meta shift. A tier brawlers. Kenji moved down from S tier to A tier after reload speed nerf. Shade moved from S tier to A tier, less broken than initially thought. Gale stays in A tier, good counter to aggressive brawlers. Jean remains in A tier despite more counters. Piper stays in A tier, unaffected by auto-aimer gadget changes. Angela remains one of the strongest sharpshooters. 8-Bit moved up from B tier to A tier due to favorable meta. Larry and Laurie stay in A tier, though less played since Juju's release. Maisie moved up from B tier to A tier after damage and health buffs. Amber remains in A tier, consistently strong. Daryl dropped from S tier to A tier, still good, but with better alternatives. Janet jumped from D tier to A tier thanks to hypercharge. Rico stays in A tier despite multi-ball launcher nerf. Byron remains strong at healing and damage. Max stays in A tier as an excellent support. Oli debuts in A tier, unreleased at time of recording. Eve climbed from C tier to A tier with hypercharge. Gray moved up from B tier to A tier with hypercharge. Lou moved up from B tier to A tier after reload speed buff. Frank stays in A tier despite power grab nerf. Penny remains strong in current meta. Melody moved up from B tier to A tier, balanced by supercharge nerf. Barry moved from B tier to top of A tier with hypercharge. S tier brawlers. Stu remains in S tier since getting hypercharge. Surge stays in S tier, unaffected by health nerf. Ash moved up from A tier to S tier, strongest aggressive brawler with hypercharge. Gus remains best support brawler in S tier. Juju stays in S tier as best thrower. Melee, unreleased, predicted to be second best brawler. Buzz Lightyear ranks as best brawler despite competitive restrictions and recent nerfs to saber/laser modes. And that's all the brawlers right now in Brawl Stars. Thanks for watching until the end and have a good brawling.